months. This is our seventh or eighth. To be honest, I've stopped counting, but it's almost two full months.
Yeah, you're right. And I think I've done everyone but one. But
Right.
But I want to welcome everybody to attend the TATT Chat. I will say that when Dean and I first started talking about this right after the COVID-19 situation, we were just, for newcomers, you've heard me say this before, we were just trying to make sure that we stayed connected and stayed relevant as an organization to the upstate community. And what I'm pleased to say is that our speakers, our presentations, our topics, I believe have been right on time, and I think we won't disappoint today in what we're presenting. And they usually take about an hour, and you're here, and it's very impactful, so I'll go ahead and get started. We'll have two updates right in the body of the meeting. And I first started thinking about this. One of my dear friends, Mike Wilson, Mike is with Johnson Control, and we were talking the other day about what his company was doing in regards to the COVID situation. And I thought it would be very practical, especially, you know, for those of us who have to operate public buildings, and even in the private sector where you've got employees coming back into your environments, and we all want to be very careful. And Mike said, Mike brought up the topic, and I know enough about it to be dangerous, but he said that we have a guy in our organization, Philip Lowry, and Philip's, and I'm gonna let Philip tell you a little bit about himself. He has a long history with this company, and he's one of these guys that travels a lot, and so he gets to other parts of the country. And what I've asked Philip to talk about today is how Johnson Control can help our organizations as we go forward. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Philip, and tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
Mayor, I'll be glad to. Thank you again. Mayor, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we're good.
Okay, I wanted to make sure and test that. Well, as you said, I don't know that I'm as eloquent of a speaker as Mike Wilson, but who is, right, Mayor? Right, Mayor?
That's good, Phil.
Having said that, I do have the luxury of telling you that I've been blessed. I started with Johnson Controls in May of 1998. Clearly, that's more than a minute ago. And over these more than 2 decades, have been honored to be a part of an organization that I've seen grow, and quite frankly, grow in a way that we've continued to increase our attention on creating more resilient, more efficient, and safer building environments in all type of building sectors. Our organization, Johnson Controls, actually started in 1885 by Professor Warren Johnson, and he is credited with inventing the first thermostat. And that was kind of a creation out of necessity because he got tired of trying to remind the guy down in the boiler room to add more coal to the boiler during the winter time. And so he invented a device that sensed the temperature in his classroom and rang a little bell down in the boiler room. Over more than 130 years now, our organization has grown into approximately 150 different countries, and we employ probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 120,000 employees, give or take a few on any given day. So it's been really a blessing and an honor to be a part of watching this company grow over the last 2 decades. We have a really simple core mission, and we can move on into, Justine, you told me to trigger you, if you don't mind helping me a little bit. We'll move on into the next slide after this one, and forgive me, that's my fault for not keeping up. So again, this is a little bit about our organization. And as we go to the very next slide, we'll pause there for a second. And I can tell you, I think very succinctly, our core mission is to work to improve the financial net position of our clients. And we do that by raising revenues or creating new revenue streams while significantly lowering operational costs, and then transferring the risk of performance of that project work from our client's shoulders to ours. Over the last 4 decades, very specifically, we've watched our nation adopt legislation in 49 or 50 states that really guides not only Johnson Controls' approach to the marketplace on guaranteeing these outcome-based solutions, but our entire industry. And the Iowa remains the only state that doesn't have specific enabling legislation, which was put into place, quite frankly, to protect the interests of our customers and be a guidepost with how we engage those school districts, those cities, counties, and agencies of local governments, state governments, and federal governments. But really, as we move on to the next slide, we found that our world, like many of you would agree, that 3 months ago, our world changed. Fortunately, I think we were really in the right place for this change. We have products that you'll learn a little bit more about that have been in healthcare industries for many decades. And in fact, it's sort of proud for me to tell you that we have some presence in more than 50% of our nation's hospitals and healthcare facilities. So when the pandemic first hit in Wuhan, the response was, can you build an acute care hospital and can you do it in 6 days? Well, that's pretty daunting. If we go to the next slide, what you'll find is not only as you try to read some of this eye chart, but we actually did build that hospital in Wuhan, China, acute care facility in a 6 to 7 day time frame. And as the pandemic and the COVID outbreak continue to migrate into the Western world and into the United States, once again, we were called upon by state governments and local governments and the federal government to see if we could repeat the activity of being able to build acute care facilities in cities across our nation. As everyone on the call is already aware, that the outbreak started in cities with great metropolitan densities of population, cities like Seattle and Detroit and Chicago and New York, continues to be problematic for many of those cities. So the United States Army Corps of Engineers began reaching out to organizations like Johnson Controls and saying, what can you do to convert residence halls on vacant college campuses, to build tent hospital environments in the parking lots of existing hospitals, or to convert convention centers like the case that's on the screen here in Detroit? Can you convert those into makeshift hospitals? Do you have the ability to create environments with negative pressure so that the virus itself is contained within the space? Do you have access to supply streams for nurse call stations and medicine gas, life safety systems, new HVAC systems, and the filtering that comes with those? And can you put up showers and toilets and a lot of other things? And by the way, can you do this in 6 or 7 days? In the case that you see here, we were able to put 1,000 beds into a convention center in Detroit in just that time frame. The virus continued to move eastwardly, and we received a phone call. I received a phone call one Friday night about 3 months ago from NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority. And they were very quiet on the phone for a moment. They said, we just have one question. Can you help the state of New York double its hospital bed capacity in 2 weeks? It's like moving a mountain, right? And then they said, maybe it's a little easier. 50% of that's New York City. But that equates to probably tens of thousands, no, hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million plus beds. And do we have the ability to source those material and labors of subcontract labors and accomplish that task in a short time frame? So we worked what felt like 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, to create these environments to accomplish 2 things: to offload from the hospital non-acute care patients into step-down facilities, and to also create secure kind of intensive care type environments in parking lots and in hotel rooms. It was a Herculean task unlike anything I've faced in my 2 decades. Let's move to the next slide. So we came through that pandemic, and that really puts us into what we think is the next phase of opportunity in our nation. And it's an opportunity, once again, to continue to serve our nation. As we see the leveling off effect, and the leveling off effect is largely in many states in our nation now. Fortunate to live in South Carolina because, quite frankly, I was able to get a haircut yesterday and I really needed it. So our nation is returning to this new sense of a new normal, but areas in our nation are, quite frankly, not. New York is still battling the pandemic, and then unthought of sectors of our nation are really being burdened in ways that I can't describe. My role with our organization currently, as Dean asked me to say, is the North American Director of our state government business. And agencies of state, as you might imagine, the one that's most critical is Department of Corrections. In the Department of Corrections, it's nearly impossible just to release the entire population of inmates and offenders back into population. But those facilities were not built to have more than a small infirmary. And so the spread of a airborne viral contagion like the COVID virus that we're seeing has really started to decimate certain corrections agencies, most notably that I know of in Virginia and Indiana. And I think we've been shielded in South Carolina a little bit, but it is still very problematic in that sector of our society. So we've been asked, as we continue to work to try to level off the continued spread of the pandemic, as we work to try to relieve the hospitals and healthcare facilities from the problem of how to treat and where to treat, the next step moves into how do we reopen our buildings. And Justine, if you don't mind, we can move into that phase of the discussion. We track the CARES funding that you've heard of. We have state and federal lobbyists who continue to track the development of what would be the HEROES Act or the next wave of stimulus funding, most of which is built around the recognition that technologies will be needed to change the indoor air qualities of the facilities that we occupy, whether we're occupying them at a K-12 level or at an institution of higher education, a commercial building, or I saw a friend Dyke Spencer on the phone here, his office building. There's going to be a continued need across our nation to address how we reoccupy buildings. And I think that becomes part of the maybe biggest part of this conversation. Justine, would you move on to the next slide? So this is not inclusive for all of you who are watching by any stretch of the imagination, the number of technologies that are available. Johnson Controls it didn't become a multi-billion-dollar company without actually acquiring a number of other organizations along the way. And one of those that would be common to you is the heating and refrigeration company York that we've owned for many, many years. We also acquired Tyco, which is a fire suppression company, and Simplex Grinnell, which is a securities company. And you go down that long list, you look at all the products that they make, and once again, the ability to respond early on was not coming out of the fact that we had 2 months to create new products. It was the fact that we had products that were already being used in healthcare applications that we needed to increase the economies of scale of manufacturing, the economies of scale of how we source these products into multiple markets across our nation and around the world in days and weeks instead of months and years. I'll talk about a few of these that I find very interesting, and I may even ask Mike to talk about a couple. Most of these applications have been made so that they require little to no effort to retrofit your existing heating and ventilation equipment. Very small scale changes at very low cost. That's the beauty of most of them. So looking at any air handling unit and having the inclusion of bipolar ionization, or if you see in the top right-hand corner some UV or ultraviolet lighting applications, these do not require whole-scale changes of your existing HVAC equipment, but they are bolt-on type applications that are designed to filter the air in some cases, to disinfect the air in other cases, to ionize the air so that molecules can't speak, whether they be viral or bacteria or quite frankly dust, become ionized and heavy, and they drop and form a little bit of a talcum powder type dust over your desk. You will see these things working, and the fact that you have to clean a little bit more should encourage you that those strategies are working very well because they clean the environment in which you work, play, live. The one that's in the middle is very interesting to me. And Justine, may I ask you, could I share my screen for just a moment? Okay, thank you. I'm going to blow up one of these strategies. I should have sent that to you already, Justine, but if I'm not throwing you a total audible here, I am going to share a screen and show you a little bit up close view of some of these products. Can you see that, Justine? Can you give me a thumbs up that you see a lighting dropper?
I see it.
Okay.
Dean, let us know if you can see it, though I might need to move my screen a little.
All right, so I just pick on this one. There are hundreds of them. We don't have time for hundreds of them in the discussion. But as you imagine, if you think of a commercial building, maybe even some of the buildings you work in, and you look above and you have a drop ceiling and it has fluorescent or LED lighting fixtures, this particular fixture is made to go in the existing place. The beauty of it is you will see that it has air intake and air exhaust. It has LED lighting to illuminate the space. And then as you unpeel the onion just a little bit, that's what it looks like in its application alongside of your traditional lighting. But here's the interesting part. It's designed to intake air from one side, to use UV lighting, which is above your illuminating lighting, to clean the air itself, to filter it on the left-hand side, and then to re-exhaust that air back out into the space. It works as long as the light is on, and it works tremendously well at a very low cost and a very quick retrofit application. Another one that people seem to really enjoy is this looks a lot like going to the airport. I think, Dean, you introduced that I travel a lot. My travel up until March was about 140 flights a year for the last 15 years. And in my role across North America, it's quite frankly not only to serve our own organization, but to be a conduit of best practices to bring these technologies to bear, not only to our own employees, but for meetings like this. This is a bolt-on application. Believe it or not, it only takes 4 bolts and a power cord and an outlet. And as you walk through it backward and forward like you would at the airport, it actually uses UV lighting to disinfect. Justine, I know we only have about 20 minutes and we're 19 minutes into that. I'm not going to show more of those. If you want to go back to the presentation, I can stop presenting now. And then if the group later on wants to have questions, we can explore any of these technologies. Do you mind reloading the presentation? So having said that, we have, as many of our competitors in our space, a lot of literature that's been developed in the last 2 months. And that literature is specifically directed at policies, true best-in-class, standard operating procedures for reopening buildings. And as you might imagine, the procedures focus on the cleaning of the building initially, the continued maintenance of the equipment necessary to disinfect, the type of strategies that are most commonly applicable to certain types of spaces, those with high volumes of people and those with low volumes of people. Strategies in these SOPs or standard operating procedures of how air can be disinfected in the evening when the building is not occupied. So I would be happy at any point to make those available for anyone. And again, it's not designed, as I told Dean earlier, to be necessarily a commercial about Johnson Controls, even though I really love this organization and blessed to be a part of it. It's what our industry is doing to help our nation prepare to reopen in what we've considered this new normal. Justine, excuse me, I think there's one more closing slide. It puts us right at the 20 minutes. That brings us to the point of questions. Forgive me for not having the ability to go in depth on a lot of these, but if any of that piques the interest of your group, I would be more than happy to take as long as you have available to field and answer questions about how our organization or our greater industry is really responding to its need to serve our nation to reopen its buildings.
So Dean, how are we doing on time? Do we have enough time for questions?
We do. We're in good shape. And I would say if you have a question, either through chat or let me know, and we will unmute your line as well. I'm going to start with Philip. If there's a smaller company that's on a limited budget, what is one thing that they could do that you think would give them the biggest bang for the buck in bringing safety wise in bringing people back to the office? One thing they should do.
I think it's more important to focus on the occupied building than the unoccupied building. And by that, I mean, there has been a lot of money, arguably needlessly or needed, to disinfect buildings to move in. The virus has been lying there dead if it is even in the building. I would focus on the occupied building, creating the safe space, but then disinfecting the air. I would focus on the ASHRAE standard, which is to change air X number of times per hour, ASHRAE being the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers. And they do opine about the best strategy to clean air as it continues to recirculate in the space. And what we're seeing, the two most efficient mechanisms to do that are the UV lighting that's inside the air handler itself. You can put it in your home, in your split system, or in your large commercial air handler, or the bipolar ionization, or a combination of those. Dean, that's a long answer. Those are the two strategies that will get that done.
Oh, very good. Is there anyone else? We'll open it up. If anyone has a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll unmute you. If not, we can certainly, I'm sure Philip will be happy to take questions offline. So,
I have a question, Dean.
okay.
Philip, that the area that's occupied, you had mentioned those two strategies. One was, can you repeat those again?
The strategies that I was asked about that are most cost effective are the inclusion of UV lighting and bipolar ionization, which are retrofit techniques for existing air conditioning equipment. Air conditioning meaning conditioned air and heating. Those are probably the best two strategies if you're a small company not wanting to spend a considerable amount of money. If you want to expand that, we have an array of thermal cameras that will tell you the temperature of an individual as they walk into a building, right? Those strategies are a little bit more complex, but Dean asked me the ones that are most cost effective. I like those two strategies.
Okay, okay. I saw on the news, and I know the question was cost effectiveness, but I'm also thinking about what could be done in the home. They had used some kind of, I want to say electromagnetic lighting in the subway train. Are you familiar with that?
I have heard of, well, yes, I have, because subways are one of the reasons that New York City has such a problem, such mass transit, right? It's the reason we don't have the problem in South Carolina. You've got that high density of people living in multi-story buildings, commuting back and forth to work or to play on subway systems. So we have heard of those. I think the bipolar ionization works similarly to that particular strategy.
Great question. I think we got one more that popped up. I don't know if you can see it, Philip, but it says, how about a small nonprofit who rents space within an office building?
If you're renting space within the office building, Dean, I think the question goes back to the landlord, who is responsible for the capital equipment that serves the building and the maintenance thereof, right? And I think it would behoove, quite frankly, any landlord, if it wants to continue to maintain its tenant relationship, to look at indoor air quality. So I would introduce the landlord to these strategies. And again, we have 120 branch offices across the nation who are very responsive with these types of very low cost solutions. That would be my off the cuff remark, Dean. I hope that who asked the question appreciates that.
Well, good. I appreciate the, when I first was talking to Mike about this, I was thinking about air quality and circulation and how that affects all of us. And I appreciate, Philip, you giving us this presentation. I'm sure that Dean is and his guys have been great at getting this information and capturing this meeting, and we'll get it out to our tended to top contacts. And if you guys have any questions, or if you want to discuss this any further with these guys at Johnson Control, I'm sure they'd be willing to help. Thank you both. Philip, Mike, thanks.
Thanks, Terrence.
Next, I'm going to, we're going to switch gears here and talk about something that's going on in my second favorite city in the upstate. Of course, my favorite one is Anderson. But over the last decade, I've gotten to really respect some of the things that are going on in Spartanburg. And more than anything, I've gotten to know their CEO, their chamber exec, Alan Smith. He's bright, he's young, and he knows how to, as my dad said, he knows how to get things done, you know, and it doesn't take a whole lot of time. So Alan's going to talk about, I didn't know when they talked about the Burg, I didn't put Spartanburg in the Burg, but he's going to talk to us a little bit about bringing back the Burg. Alan.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and those were really kind remarks. I just want to remind you, I can't vote for you. I live in Spartanburg. Want to thank Dean for having me, and appreciate Dean and all he's done. Really, I was the CEO of the Greer Chamber before I came to Spartanburg. I've been here. June will be 6 years. I was in Greer 4, so I've been in the upstate for 10 years, and appreciate Dean and what TATT Top does. Also enjoyed, Philip, your presentation. We're doing big things in Spartanburg. I don't know if we're building hospitals in 6 days, but we do have a lot of momentum here. And so one thing I wanted to talk about was, first out of the gate is, we don't get as much media attention as some other markets do. And so I think it's important for folks on this call to understand, what kind of economic tear that we have been on in this community the last really 5 to 7 years, before I talk a little bit about our plans for moving forward and how we're positioned to respond to COVID. When you look at the level of investment coming into Spartanburg, both international and domestic, over the past 6 years, we represented 60% of the entire region's investment. And you break that out on a statewide level, 25% of every dollar invested in South Carolina over the past 6 years came out of Spartanburg County announcements. And if you break that down even further into downtown, 1 in 4 businesses in downtown Spartanburg was not even there 36 months ago. So we have enjoyed tremendous economic success. And we see that despite this, what we're calling a temporary pause, because that's what we believe it is, it's a temporary pause. We see that trajectory even continuing. An example of that is in November of 2017, the taxpayers of Spartanburg County approved a $224 million penny sales tax. $224 million is going to be invested in downtown Spartanburg, build a $155 million new courthouse, and just about the remainder of that balance is going to be spent on South Carolina's only city-county joint municipal and county complex. And we believe that private investment is going to follow that substantial public investment, and we're already seeing that. Area Development Magazine named this the 4th strongest economy in the nation last year. Another publication ranked us number 6 in the country in terms of industrial space absorption. So we absorbed 7 million square feet of industrial space last year. We surpassed Phoenix, Philadelphia, and we're literally 1 project away from surpassing Houston. We are a little unique the way that we're structured. We are the only consolidated model of chamber, CVB, economic development, countywide and downtown, all under 1 roof in South Carolina, North Carolina. For as far as we can tell, there's only about 6 set up like us nationwide. So that's why I'm going to share a little bit on the tourism side as well. Last year, we recorded a $361 million economic impact in tourism, which is our highest ever. We were very excited to see, as optimistic and as bullish as we are about things that are happening, we're also realistic and didn't think that we would be number 1 in South Carolina on a tourism metric, but we were. We had 21% growth in new hotel product. So we added 7 new hotels in Spartanburg County last year, and by percentage, 21% room growth. That was number 1 in South Carolina. So I say all that to say we encountered COVID with tremendous momentum. In fact, historic momentum by the numbers. But you all wanted me to come on and talk about bringing back the Burg and where we're headed coming out of this, and I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to answer any questions. First and foremost, this is something that we had been thinking about literally in late March about forming a business recovery task force. But we were very deliberate and we were very intentional, and we took our time because we wanted to make sure that this task force represented the geographical, the economic, and the racial diversity of our entire county. And we can say that with this group that we've composed. You've got folks from Woodruff to Inman. We literally, and we do this often in Spartanburg, and we do this well, We literally sit down with Excel sheets, and by the percentages, we make sure that races are represented. We made sure that small businesses were represented, manufacturers were represented, nonprofits, so on and so forth. So the composition to us was very important. We felt like if we got that wrong, we would spend a lot of our time recovering as we built the recovery task force. So we were very intentional about the composition. The other thing that we were very deliberate about, really before we even put the group together, is making this a data-based approach. As we emerge from COVID, we can't say we feel like we've recovered. You know, I felt like I saw more people downtown, or I felt like I saw more traffic on 95. So we really got our community's leaders, the owners of our community's data together and said, okay, how can we really say that we've recovered in an empirical database way? So we took a lot of time looking at historical data going all the way back to 2017 related to occupancy rates, RevPAR rates, sales tax, building permits, hospitality tax, accommodation tax, unemployment. And we have a hard number on every single one of those that we're going to be looking at literally weekly as we move forward to say, okay, once we reach this metric, we can say, you know what, we've begun to recover from a sales tax perspective. We've begun to recover from a hospitality tax perspective. So we spent a lot of time making sure that we get the fundamentals right, maybe before we go so public about, you know, everything we're doing. As it relates to what we're doing, we will have a press conference on Thursday. The task force now, between the task force and the leadership cabinet, we've had 3 meetings now. So a couple of the things that we're going to be launching on Thursday is a partnership with Spartanburg Regional Healthcare System. We felt like consumer behavior is going to be incredibly important coming out of this, and the businesses that are able to demonstrate either to their clients or their customers that this is indeed a safe office, or this is a safe restaurant, or this is a safe retail place, those businesses are going to win, not just with customers, but also with their employees. So again, we were a little deliberate in making sure that we sat down with Spartanburg Regional Healthcare System and really defined what that would look like. And so we will be launching basically a campaign that says, our commitment to combating COVID together. And a business has to demonstrate 5 or 6 things that they are doing in order to achieve this. So it's not a, hey, we're doing this. It is a accountability, healthcare-based partnership with a healthcare organization. And when someone comes to either a law office or a restaurant, whatever it may be, they'll be greeted by 11 by 17 poster that says, we are committed to combating COVID together, and we are committed to your safety by doing these specific things. And there'll be a list of 5 or 6 things. And again, it's branded by the hospital as well. And we think too that it will set up some accountability. It's going to set up accountability between the business and their customers. It's going to set up accountability between the employee and the employer. We realize that this has already created all kinds of issues between employees and employers. We're not trying to exacerbate that problem, but we are trying to build some accountability there. So you'll see that announced. There's already been a tremendous amount of work done before the task force even started as far as our organization is concerned related to tourism, business, and economic development. We'll touch on some of those things as well. I'll give you one thing that's remarkable. Over the past 30 days, we've received, and I said this on a call last week to you all, over the past 30 days, we've received more requests for information related to economic development projects, both domestically and internationally, than we did the entire first quarter of 2019. So we believe that we are really positioned well when you look at some of the supply chain disruptions when you look at some of the manufacturing that's going to come onshore. Right now, we have 4.1 million square feet of spec space ready to go in Spartanburg County. So there's not going to be any kind of build up or build out or waiting for any of that for some of these organizations that want to expand or come onshore. So we're going to talk a little bit about that at the press conference as well, and also talk about our Back the Berg fund. This has been remarkable. We haven't, our organization, we've been very fortunate due to our structure. We haven't had to lay off or furlough a single employee, and I don't see where we're going to have to do that. Of course, this can change at any moment in time. We've also been able to scrape together $100,000 to seed local Back the Berg Business Recovery Fund, and totally unsolicited, we've had other organizations step forward as well. So we'll have an announcement about that later on this week. And we already have some local government partnerships that are going to really make, I think, that local fund pretty special as it moves forward. There are a lot of people, for whatever reason, didn't qualify for EIDL or PPP. This will have a different set of criteria. A good portion of that money also will be restricted to low and moderate income. We want to make sure that, you know, every business person has the opportunity to succeed in this environment. So that was a lot. There was very, very high level. I could provide more detail to anybody that wants to talk offline, but I'm happy to take any questions. But let me just close by saying that, you know, we had a lot of momentum coming into this. We believe we have a lot of momentum coming out of it. And really, our bread and butter sectors, by every national data trend, are the sectors that are going to emerge the quickest.
Good, thank you, Alan. All good information. It's always good to hear what's going on in Spartanburg, the Berg. Any questions, Dean? Did anybody chat anything that you
We
can tell?
did. We had a question, Alan, about you know, tourism in Spartanburg County and really across the upstate, but obviously in Spartanburg, you know, as we head into the Memorial Day weekend, and it seems like there is an interest, you know, more likely in people going to destinations that are within automobiles as opposed to flying. You know, has Spartanburg done anything to promote itself as a car trip tourism destination? And you know, what do you see as the challenges? Let's start with Memorial Day, but on through the summer with a lot of the concerns still people have for, you know, going to 4th of July events and other, you know, I don't know, has Spartanburg, what you guys are doing with the music nights that y'all typically have and some of those other events that many of our communities have, what are y'all doing short term, but then for the rest of the summer, what have been the conversations about gatherings and things that are community and tourism related?
Well, let me first, when you mention music, I got to mention this too, and I think that anybody on this call from any other community that hasn't done this needs to do it. We had been actually pressing for the past 18 to probably 20 months, even commissioned the economic impact study to close a portion of Main Street, better activate Morgan Square. We had an economic impact study that talked about the money that would drive to downtown businesses, the additional capacity that it would give restaurants, so on and so forth. And, you know, it was something we were still working on. In fact, we had a little into some income to make that happen all before pre-COVID. And we met a little resistance in the community around that idea. I think people were maybe nervous about control. People were always nervous about change. But you know what? Lo and behold, this situation has caused our downtown. Our downtown was the first downtown City of Spartanburg deserves a tremendous amount of praise because I talked to the city manager about this. I said, hey, look, if there was ever a time to close Main Street and better activate Morgan Square and give our restaurants some more capacity, this would be it. We talked about that on a Friday and all the logistics were ironed out and it was open on Monday. So the city turned it around in 2 days. And I can tell you right now, and this is certifiable, we'd have had 2 restaurants in downtown Spartanburg that would have closed if it wouldn't have been for that swift action. So again, I mean, this crazy challenge has really opened up a lot of opportunities and opened a lot of people's eyes to, wow, you know, you guys might have had that right 18 months ago when you had that crazy brain idea to activate Morgan Square every single day. So yes, that's a, you know, the festivals, Dean, are good, but our bread and butter is sports tourism. We do incredibly well as it relates to that. In fact, last week, I'm not even sure if we've done a press release on this yet. Last week, we secured 2023 and 2024 National Junior College National Championship for softball, which you may say, okay, what is that really a big deal? Yes. Both of those events will result in a combined 5,000 room nights. And those kinds of levels right there, we do well in recruiting those size tournaments. In fact, we have an agreement with Greenville where we can't even accommodate all the rooms. So when we send business their way to their hotels, we get a cut of that. So sports tourism, and we have a couple other things to announce as it relates to regional and national NCAA championships here in the near future. We feel like as it relates to tourism, this market is positioned pretty well too, because, for example, the National Junior College thing I just announced and told you, they were in Las Vegas. And the organizers, the National Junior College Athletic Association, just doesn't feel comfortable about going to a major metropolitan area anymore. So some of these smaller markets, and that's on an economic development front too, some of these smaller markets are going to be able to get some opportunities that maybe they were shut out of before. We've also cut off all our what we call flight business. So any business, travel and tourism that requires somebody to get on an airplane, we're not even serving ads to those markets anymore. We've taken all those funds and we're putting all those funds in drive time markets where we see a lot of success, like Knoxville, Chattanooga, Charlotte, Raleigh. So yeah, I mean, tourism is going to be a ways out. I think it's going to be a little bit of a lagging sector, but like I said, we've set occupancy and RevPAR numbers for recovery, and they're pretty aggressive.
Well,
Good.
great.
Well,
Alan, we probably, Dean, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Terrence.
I was just going, that's a lot of good information. And I think it is, we started talking about best practices and what we can do across the entire upstate. And I'm sure Alan, and just like a lot of us in the upstate, would be willing to share any information that you've got going on. As a matter of fact, Todd Horn gave me the Berg about a month ago. So we talked about it a little bit, and hopefully we can, we're working on somewhat duplicating the same thing here in the upstate. So Alan, thank you for your time, and reach out to Alan if he can help you, okay? Thanks, Alan.
Happy to help. Thank you.
And just circle back again before I get off the program right at the end. Thank you, Philip and Mike. We're going to move right into the TATT at the Top updates. Dean, you can start that one.
Great. Thank you, Terrence. And I'll echo thanks to Michael, Philip, and Alan. I was in Spartanburg today with Mark McKinney, who is on the call for lunch, and we were downtown there in the area. We ate inside because it was a little bit wet, but it is a neat atmosphere, and I think there's a lot of innovative things that a lot of our communities across the upstate have been doing, and part of what our role as an organization is to understand what the opportunities and the challenges are in our communities across the region, and then help to connect folks to others who can be supportive or to grow the collective capacity in multiple different ways. And so one of the things we're doing, and we've mentioned them the last couple of weeks in these on this call, is we're starting a virtual listening tour in the 7 non-urban counties, counties other than Spartanburg, Greenville, and Anderson for right now. Then we'll connect with those 3 communities, all of which have been doing a lot as well We had the first one of those this past Tuesday in Cherokee County. Got a lot of good information. I think one of the ahas for me, and I'm sure for everyone, is that the reality is some of the as Alan said, about Spartanburg having been very successful before this, and now they're just looking at what they can continue to do to be successful in some of our communities. Some of the challenges that they had before continue to be challenges, and one of the things specifically in Cherokee they talked about was mobility and access to transportation, and of course that's a challenge in many of our communities. So we're looking forward to understanding what the issues are in our communities. Once we have done all 7 of these listening sessions, we're going to take all that material and sync it and see where there are consistencies, and then that will help, I hope, with us and with others in being able to continue to support the communities in our region. So next week we have 2 listening tour sessions, one in Greenwood and one in Lawrence. And in addition to the folks from that community, we invite anyone else who is interested in being on those calls to learn and to help build connections across the region. So Sharon can share the information with the registration information for those. And we also have Union and Oconee set for the following week, and we're still working on dates for Pickens and for Abbeville. So be in tune to those, and we certainly invite anybody to be part of those sessions as we move forward. Also, a little information about this weekly call, the TATT Chat. Our plan was, we said we're going to do this through the end of May and then see where we are from there. We are going to continue next week with our last call of May. We have GP McClear with the South Carolina Arts Alliance, who will give a brief overview. And then in addition to that, we also are going to have folks from each of the 10 counties for quick updates again, as we have had in past weeks. Then we're going to take a break for a week and then come back in June and have 2 calls on the 11th of June. And we've got what I think is going to be a really good speaker that we're finalizing. And then we will do one again on the 25th of June. And then we again will assess whether to continue or not. So with that, I'm going to turn it over. While we have been doing these calls and other ways of connecting and working through COVID-19, we've also been engaging around a number of other areas. And one of them was a partnership with Clemson University and United Ways in the Upstate that Sharon led, that fits. You may know that we have done over the years a number of regional asset maps in a number of different areas. And as COVID-19 came on, Clemson came to us and asked of supporting them and being involved in doing one around food services or food access. And I'll turn it over to Sharon to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, hi, sorry, I was trying to get links for the listening tour on there. But yeah, really excited to have this map complete. It was a lot of teamwork between the folks at Clemson, the United Way. It was in support of the 211 list to make sure that was complete. I'm missing some folks, but it was a lot of people working on this together, and it was a really great thing to be a part of. And now it is on our, let me see if I can share my screen and get you the map. I cannot, but you can, I'll put the link here in the chat when I'm done talking. But yes, the map is available. It has a lot of food access resources across the upstate. There is a link if there are resources that are not listed on the map to let us know, and we'll add it to the map. But I'm really excited to have that out into the world.
Well, good, thank you. I looked at the map, very good job. I like the how interactive it was, and if you hadn't had a chance to look at that, please take a look at it. I thought I was part of the listening tour in Cherokee County, and I was surprised. I assumed one of my aha was broadband access to students. You know, a speaker talked about that, and so there are a lot of issues in upstate that have come out of the COVID pandemic, and so but we continue to work through them. I think we're going to wrap up with county updates. Sharon?
Mhm. Yes, I have. From all of the counties, I'll be speaking for everybody today, even though a few of these people are on the call. And they're not in alphabetical order this time, they're just from how I got them. So Roy Costner from Pickens County Council says, I'm encouraged by the spirit and desire of the people in our county to get back to work and to support local businesses. The challenge is to continue to help our at-risk population while doing all we can to work with our community leaders to strengthen our economy over the next several months. Missy House, the county administrator the city administrator from Inman in Spartanburg County, the encouraging thing, we have been able to keep our whole staff and offer flex scheduling for some folks. The challenging thing is we are in the midst of budget season with a small budget and a lot of services we provide. It's hard to know how to plan for the future. We know our budget will be hit. It's just a question of how much and the ability to deliver all of our current services. Liz Seaman from Greenville County Council, who spoke last week and did a great job. Thanks, Liz. She says her encouraging note would be that we are still seeing economic development opportunities coming in through the pipeline, both expansions of existing companies and new companies wanting to locate in the county. The challenging note would be the balancing act of all counties and municipalities is faced with as we work towards reopening while maintaining community health. This applies to everything from opening our parks to Little League to holding in-person council meetings again. Tony Brown from Envision Williamston in Anderson County, he says one thing that has been encouraging is that we have two new entrepreneurial businesses that have decided to open. One opened at the end of April and one will open on May 30th. That's really good news. And the challenge is helping existing businesses transition to a new style of operating. Kathy Jo Lancaster from Union County Development. The challenging thing, she says, rural counties in general have been hard hit, and a lot of that is related to limited resources, healthcare, et cetera, with a lot of businesses closing their doors. She says she's very impressed by industrial companies. They've all had plans in place to provide a safe environment. They've made sure employees had access to resources for unemployment, et cetera, if they did have to have layoffs. A lot of them changed their product line to make PPE, and she's just been impressed with the very innovative things that they've been doing. Heather Jones from the Greenwood Partnership Alliance says we've had over $40 million worth of projects on the council's agenda Tuesday night and have several other new projects moving through the process. Our organization has been impressed with the activity Greenwood County has seen over the past 2 months. For the challenge, she says we're seeing budget concerns at all levels, government, industry, small business, nonprofits, et cetera. There's a trickle down associated with this, so there's anxiety about the coming fiscal year for many organizations. Amanda Munyon from the Lawrence County Chamber. Her encouraging thing is she says a few COVID-related task forces are developing to support collaborative efforts for recovery and the future success of Lawrence County, the businesses, organizations, and residents. We're excited about the positive attitudes and outlooks and the team-driven effort across various sectors. County leadership is ready to get back to business, taking necessary precautions for everyone's safety. The challenge in Lawrence, the fear of the unknown is a huge challenge in many areas. I feel confident we're in a good situation to tackle this through communication and education. We want businesses to feel confident serving their customers, shifting their business models where needed, and residents need to feel comfortable patronizing those businesses. Franny Stockwell from Cherokee County Chamber says one encouraging thing is that we are starting to open back, and the challenge is everything having to work around social distancing. Mike Clary from the city of Abbeville says he's been encouraged by the resiliency of our local business community and by efforts to support local small businesses. Most all of our small businesses have either reopened or are planning to in the coming weeks. And he says he's not aware of a single small business that has announced plans to permanently close. Also, in a very generous gesture, Abbeville First Bank announced yesterday they're mailing a $20 Square Dollars gift card to all of their customers to as part of their Back to Work initiative, which can be redeemed at participating local businesses. The challenge has been the speed at which the federal relief programs have been administered. While they're certainly moving as quickly as possible, given the circumstances, many businesses are still waiting for emergency loans, and many laid off employees have yet to receive their benefits. And last, Paul Kane from the Oconee County Council. The encouraging thing from him is the community's response to the tornado has been incredible. So much debris has been cleaned up, and the outpouring of support has been inspiring. Challenging, the biggest near-term challenge for Oconee County is sustaining the recovery from the tornado. Now that most of the outside relief organizations have departed, the local response is critical to finish the mission.
Okay, thank you, Sharon.
Oh, there's my screen. There's the map.
Yep, saw the map.
Okay.
Good, but thanks for the update of the 10 counties. We're right at the top of the hour. 1 minute. Does anybody have something to say before we head on to the other endeavors this afternoon? Going once, going twice. Good. Appreciate you. We'll be here next Thursday, and thank you all, and be safe, and talk to you soon.
Thanks, Terrence.
Goodbye.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.